context, let's talk a little bit about the early days of Polestar design, because you obviously started here in the Volvo days. Can you give us a little bit of an idea when this project came about and it's like, hey, we want to do Polestar as its own brand and we want to do something else? What was going on in your mind? Because clearly there was some kind of idea to develop it. What's been happening back then?
So I think in the very beginning, Håkan Samuelsson, the CEO of Volvo at the time, and Thomas, they, cooked up this idea of creating this performance brand positioned above Volvo. And, there was this gap in performance pedigree or, that Polestar could be taking. And then Thomas, at the time being head of design at Volvo, we discussed that in the team, how can this new brand look like? And I have to admit, in the beginning, it was quite a different character to what it was now, because the first instinct you have is immediately go into these classical luxury, the luxury playbook. Mm-hmm. So you do what you think a luxury brand should be, with lots of chrome, a big grille, and all the things that we've all learned and internalized as typical features. And then also in conjunction with the brand team around Pear, I think we discussed a lot and we came to this conclusion that it needs to be a modern, much, much more avant-garde sense of luxury, especially being a European brand Europe has so much history in luxury and in performance. So there needs to be an alternative, something novel, something fresh. And then it all spun off into this direction away from, let's say, the Volvo DNA to a much more avant-garde and challenging or a challenger in the luxury industry, that kind of notion.
When we see the very first Polestar, which was the one, which of course was very similar to a Volvo, because it started off as a concept and then it was kind of developed into
exactly
this Polestar product. And now we're sitting in the 4. We just saw, in the Cube at Pistons and Pretzels, the Roadster, the Precept. What has happened in between to kind of then say, like, okay, we're letting go of this Volvo DNA, moving much more into Polestar? What were key points where you say that was when it became Polestar for us? Was it like a new front direction? Was something much more fundamental to you to say, then this is what Polestar is all about?
The Volvo approach was always to go and take that brand into the rightful luxury position that it deserves, I think. And it wasn't so clear in the 4 times, there was a lot of carryover components, and even in design, it was this brand that was somewhere trapped in between mainstream and luxury, right? And then the task, and that was what Polestar 1, which used to be the Volvo Concept Coupe. It started as Volvo Concept Coupe. That shows it's a reinterpretation of luxury in a modern way, but still using a lot of the classical playbook in a way. And that was good for Volvo, because Volvo really deserved that elevation into this segment visually, because technologically it happened anyway, but then in terms of design, we had to help it. And for Polestar, it was quite clear that we had to move it away from that. It had to be a much more, let's say, contemporary view, a very different view, something complementary to this very classical luxury approach. And that's how it went then. And that's where it was an extrapolation of the Volvo design language, I would say. But we pretty quickly made quite a big departure, I would say.
Yeah.
And that's when this modern, robotic, yet very graphical design language came in. So from to start extremely stringent and logically, and I really like that.
Is that also something that you think is at the very core of Polestar, this kind of logical approach, this kind of language that it's developed into? I mean, it's on the one hand extremely classic Scandinavian, I would say, but I would also say it's a very modern interpretation of that. And obviously you and Thomas not being from Sweden, obviously for me elevates that quite a bit as well. But is that logical point such a a key factor for you as well? Or
For me personally, it is. I really like this idea that when you see a design, it's like not only you don't only grasp it with your emotional side, you just find it stunning or impressive, but your brain completely connects the dots, and you intellectually understand it as well. It's a good theme, a good piece of music. It's very easy to remember, but then it needs the complexity in the second layer and so on. So the interplay between the emotional side and the very logical graphical side, that's when it really makes me happy at the end. And people might not be able to put their finger on it and say, this is why I like it, but they feel it.
Yeah.
Professionals probably understand it, but let's say more normal people, customers, they might feel this attraction that goes beyond the first emotional impact, but it leads towards some kind of relationship building. But they cannot say why, but that's the reason, I think.
I find this very interesting. Obviously, Polestar has become this really not just a design-driven company, but also where the normal customer, even if they don't buy the product, says, well, there's something there that relates to me, something that attracts the eye to that sense as well. Is this always the intention in terms of what you want to do with the product? Or is it also like, we want to do something that obviously we can be proud of, but it has this identity, and then people liking it, and the majority of the people liking it is, of course, a nice little extra. But are you constantly working for something like that? So this kind of, it needs to be pretty and I want people to understand that it's pretty? Or is it more about the overall product and the direction that in the end defines what beauty and aesthetically pleasing is?
I think it's always the balance between a strong character and let's say the craftsmanship side, the beauty side that you referred to. I think it's hard to do one without the other. I mean, it works obviously, and you find your fans, but I think having both components in the end make a good design.
Max, if you want to say, what are you the most proud of over the start from Polestar to we're now sitting in the Polestar 4, which with people can see that obviously, but is in a very bold color here with gold and everything as well. So what is it that you're most proud of those last few years to where you have come from the Polestar 1 to where you are right now, which is a clear step forward? Also is distinguishingly becoming now a Polestar as well, and has moved on from this Volvo derivative, if you want to say so. And apart from the products in itself, what is it that you are the most proud of that has developed over the past 2 years that you were part of?
For me, the first thing that comes to mind is the team, because it sounds like a cliche, but it's definitely not a cliche, because we are all one unit, and everybody feels that they had a big part in creating the brand. It's a very small team, so there was nobody idling in the corner. This was really everybody had to pull their weight, and everybody delivered on creating the face and the image of the cars and the brand that we have right now. And now that the products are coming out, we see now Polestar 3 and 4 starting to be on the streets. Also that the brand is very recognizable. And I say that was not just an achievement by the design team itself. There was the brand team, and there was Thomas really pushing for keeping everything so compact and so holistic. But that, I think, makes me really proud that we stand out, that we have our own philosophy, our own approach, our own face, and that we really make a difference.
And if you would pass anything on to, let's say, somebody who's starting a company or from the brand, and also to, let's say, more established brands, say if you want to get to this level and this, call it design-driven level, brand recognition level, what was the key point for you to say this is what made the really big difference? Because it's not just the skill or the craftsmanship that you have as an automotive designer, but what is it that really brings everything together for you to say that's the, call it the secret sauce?
Trust.
Yeah.
Trust from the team to the leadership, trust from the leadership in between each other, trust to the team. Really, trust is the biggest denominator for such a strong expression.